It was a sight few could have imagined. Rick Harrison, the once beloved star of Pawn Stars, standing before a courtroom packed with reporters, fans, and skeptics. The polished charm he displayed on TV was gone, replaced by a gaunt, haunted man. The charges against him were staggering: money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy, and the most shocking of all, complicity in a murder plot. As Rick took the stand, the room fell into a hushed, almost reverent silence. Every eye was glued to him. Would he deny everything? Would he blame others? To everyone's shock, Rick did neither. He confessed. In painful, vivid detail, Rick began to unravel the dark web he had spun over the years, a web hidden behind the bright lights of reality television. His voice trembled at first, but as he spoke, there was a strange relief that washed over him, like a man unburdening himself of years of guilt. This wasn't just a courtroom confession. It was a full-blown admission of a double life lived in secret. The court, the media, and millions watching around the world listened as Rick Harrison transformed from a quirky TV personality into a man whose legacy would forever be stained by darkness. His day of reckoning had finally come, and he faced it not with defiance, but with a raw honesty that stunned everyone present. The shocking betrayals, friends, family, and fortune. In his confession, Rick revealed that betrayal had been the bloodline of his empire. From the very beginning of Pawn Stars, the show wasn't just about rare antiques and clever negotiations. It was a facade that hid the darker transactions happening behind the scenes. Rick admitted that some of his closest friends, and even members of his family, had become entangled in illegal activities for profit. He spoke of business deals that involved stolen artifacts, fake appraisals, and kickbacks from criminal syndicates. What shocked many most was how deeply personal the betrayals ran. Rick confessed to cutting out longtime friends for financial gain, setting up shady side deals without informing his partners, and manipulating contracts to ensure he stayed at the top, no matter who he hurt along the way. His family, especially his son Corey, had suffered under the weight of these hidden dealings. Trust broken in ways that could never be repaired. Rick admitted that fame had blinded him to loyalty and morality, that he had traded relationships for quick riches. The courtroom gasped when Rick recounted moments where he had the opportunity to choose right over wrong, but chose wrong every single time. His empire wasn't built on clever bartering or entrepreneurial spirit. It was built on a house of lies, betrayal, and ruthless ambition. The truth left everyone reeling. Rick Harrison had sacrificed everything and everyone for a fortune that would ultimately destroy him. A secret life of crime. How it all began. Rick Harrison's descent into criminality didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, calculated, and shockingly intentional. In his early years running the gold and silver pawn shop, Rick was faced with the reality that legitimate business sometimes couldn't pay the bills. He confessed that desperation led him to bend the rules at first, overlooking the shady origins of certain merchandise, or quietly accepting stolen goods without asking questions. But over time, these small ethical compromises turned into full-blown crimes. Rick began forging documents, bribing local officials, and striking deals with underworld figures. As Pawn Stars exploded in popularity, his crimes became even more ambitious. Rick used his fame to launder money through fake sales and bogus auctions, expertly blending illegal profits with legitimate business income. His secret life of crime operated in plain sight, hidden behind the image of a savvy, lovable negotiator. Rick admitted that every success he celebrated publicly was often the result of a darker deal made in the shadows. What began as a few bad choices snowballed into a criminal empire that controlled millions. His confession revealed that his entire television persona was a carefully crafted lie, a shield to protect a man who had chosen greed over integrity time and time again. The courtroom sat stunned as Rick detailed his transformation from struggling businessman to criminal mastermind, leaving a trail of broken laws and broken people in his wake. The murder plot, how greed led to bloodshed. Perhaps the darkest part of Rick Harrison's confession came when he described how his greed ultimately led to someone's death. It wasn't supposed to happen, Rick insisted tearfully. But once the machinery of crime starts turning, it's almost impossible to stop. Rick became involved with a dangerous ring of traffickers who used his pawn shop to move stolen art, counterfeit goods, and, in rare instances, drugs. When a former associate threatened to expose the entire operation, Rick faced a terrible choice: lose everything or silence the threat permanently. In a series of hushed meetings, Rick admitted that he facilitated payments to individuals who would take care of the problem. Though he claimed he never gave a direct order to kill, Rick provided the money that funded the operation, making him complicit in the murder. The courtroom audibly gasped when Rick confessed that, for years, he lived with the guilt, constantly looking over his shoulder, expecting the truth to come out. His televised charm and business acumen were a mask worn by a man haunted by the ultimate price of his greed. In the end, Rick couldn't outrun his sins. His involvement in the murder, whether by intent or negligence, shattered any lingering sympathy the public had for him. Rick Harrison wasn't just a criminal. He was part of a tragedy that took an innocent life, and no confession could ever bring redemption for that choice. Pawn Stars, the illusion of innocence. From the moment Pawn Stars first aired, Rick Harrison cultivated an image of the hard-working American entrepreneur, the scrappy negotiator who could find treasure in trash. Fans adored him for his wit, his keen eye, and the sense of authenticity he brought to television. But Rick's confession in court shattered that illusion completely. He admitted that Pawn Stars wasn't just entertainment, it was a meticulously staged production designed to hide the real business happening behind the scenes. Many of the customers who walked into the pawn shop were actors, and the rare artifacts often had questionable provenance. Worse still, the success of the show allowed Rick to expand his criminal operations under the radar, using the shop's celebrity status as a shield against law enforcement scrutiny. Rick detailed how he used the cover of television fame to conduct illicit deals with traffickers and counterfeiters. Fans were heartbroken to learn that the show they trusted was little more than a smokescreen, built on lies and criminality. Pawn Stars wasn't just scripted. It was part of an elaborate deception that fooled millions. Rick's confession turned one of the most beloved reality shows into a cautionary tale about how easily the public can be deceived by a carefully crafted image. In the courtroom, the myth of Rick Harrison, the lovable hustler, was officially and forever destroyed. Family torn apart. Fallout inside the Harrison household. As Rick Harrison's shocking confession unfolded, it wasn't only the public who felt betrayed. It was his family too. In court, Rick broke down describing how his secret life of crime strained and ultimately shattered the bonds within his household. His sons, Corey and Adam, had looked up to him for years, believing he was a tough but honest businessman. His late father, Richard, the old man Harrison, had instilled values of hard work and integrity. Values Rick had secretly abandoned long ago. Rick admitted that the guilt of living a double life caused tension, paranoia, and constant arguments at home. Corey, once poised to inherit the family business, began pulling away emotionally when rumors of criminal activity first surfaced. Rick's ex-wives also testified revealing years of suspicious behavior, hidden finances, and broken promises. Rick's downfall didn't just destroy his career, it tore apart the Harrison family name that had been built across generations. Inside the courtroom, the sight of Rick's estranged family sitting stiffly, avoiding eye contact, was heartbreaking. They were no longer proud heirs of a television empire. They were survivors of a devastating betrayal. Rick's confession confirmed their worst fears. The man they loved had lived a lie so convincing that even they were fooled. As Rick faced sentencing, he acknowledged the deepest wound he inflicted was not upon strangers or fans, but upon the family that trusted him most. A trust he could never earn back. The pawn shop's dark secrets, hidden deals, and dirty money. When Rick Harrison finally laid bare the truth about the gold and silver pawn shop, it painted a chilling portrait of corruption hidden behind counters and cameras. Far from being a quirky tourist attraction or a relic hunter's dream, Rick described how the shop became the center of a massive underground economy. He confessed that stolen goods were routinely bought and sold, with documentation often misplaced or forged. When valuable merchandise came through questionable channels, Rick would discreetly pay cash and log it under false names, making it almost impossible to trace. Moreover, the shop served as a perfect front for laundering money. Through fake sales and inflated appraisals, Rick and his associates cleaned dirty cash that flowed from drug deals, smuggling rings, and other organized crimes. Behind the smiling faces seen on television, employees lived under constant pressure to meet unspoken quotas or look the other way when things didn't feel right. Some insiders tried to blow the whistle, but were silenced with payouts or threats. As Rick confessed to each of these acts, the courtroom grew more tense. What fans had viewed as an American success story was, in reality, a criminal empire hiding in plain sight. The gold and silver pawn shop, once a symbol of entrepreneurial grit, now stood disgraced, its reputation ruined by the very man who built it. Rick's admissions left no doubt. The foundation of his empire was crime, and it was only a matter of time before it all crumbled. Fame's poison. How celebrity fueled. Rick's fall. Rick Harrison once dreamed of turning his small pawn shop into something bigger, but he never imagined how fame would twist everything. In court, Rick openly admitted that celebrity poisoned his judgment. At first, appearing on Pawn Stars was about survival, bringing customers into the shop and keeping the doors open. But as the show's popularity skyrocketed, Rick's ego did too. Fame made him feel invincible. He was no longer just a businessman, he was a star, invited to red carpets, talk shows, and celebrity auctions. Offers flooded in, endorsements, investments, partnerships, and with them came shady characters offering shortcuts to wealth and influence. Rick confessed that he stopped seeing boundaries. Rules that once guided him were now optional, bent in the pursuit of bigger paydays and faster success. The more famous he became, the more reckless he got, assuming his stardom could shield him from consequences. Rick became obsessed with maintaining his celebrity image, even as his criminal activities escalated behind the scenes. In the courtroom, Rick's tearful admission laid bare a powerful truth. Fame doesn't just expose people, it changes them. Rick Harrison, once a humble shop owner, became addicted to the power and prestige of celebrity, and that addiction ultimately led him down a path of ruin. His story serves as a brutal reminder that in chasing fame, one can lose everything that ever mattered. The web of associates. Who helped Rick Harrison hide his crimes? In the wake of Rick Harrison's confessions, the spotlight turned toward those who helped him maintain his criminal empire. Rick admitted that he couldn't have operated for so long without a tight circle of loyal, and often equally guilty, associates. Some were employees at the gold and silver pawn shop, quietly altering paperwork and looking the other way when illegal transactions occurred. Others were external partners, corrupt appraisers, shady suppliers, and even a few local officials who accepted bribes in exchange for silence. Rick painted a picture of a carefully orchestrated network where everyone had something to lose, and therefore a reason to stay quiet. Some associates provided Rick with stolen merchandise, while others helped him launder money through fake auctions and shell companies. Rick's lawyer tried to argue that he was merely a pawn in a larger game, but Rick himself accepted full responsibility, stating he had recruited the players. In court, names were named, and several former business partners faced investigations almost immediately after Rick's testimony. The revelation that so many people were complicit shocked the public even further. It was no longer just Rick's downfall, it was the collapse of an entire hidden empire. Rick's betrayal ran deep, implicating people who had stood beside him for decades. As the web of associates unraveled, it became painfully clear. Rick Harrison's crimes were not the work of one man alone, but the product of a culture of greed, secrecy, and shared guilt. A shocking secret addiction, Rick's hidden struggle. During his emotional court testimony, Rick Harrison revealed a deeply personal struggle that few knew about, a secret addiction that had fueled many of his worst decisions. While fans knew Rick as a tough, savvy negotiator, behind closed doors, he was battling a crippling addiction to prescription painkillers. Rick confessed that after years of back problems, worsened by standing long hours at the pawn shop and the physical demands of fame, he began taking medication. What started as legitimate pain management spiraled into dependence. The pills dulled his pain, but also clouded his judgment, making him reckless and impulsive. Rick admitted that under the influence he made risky deals, ignored red flags, and surrounded himself with increasingly dangerous people. Worse yet, he used the shop's finances to secretly fund his growing habit, setting off a chain of cover-ups that would ultimately destroy him. Rick described nights of blackout rage and paranoia, leading to even more desperate acts to keep his secrets buried. His addiction, hidden from family, friends, and fans alike, turned him into a man unrecognizable even to himself. Rick's confession left many in the courtroom stunned, not just because of the crimes he committed, but because of the silent suffering he endured while presenting a polished image to the world. His story served as a painful reminder: addiction doesn't discriminate, and untreated wounds, whether physical or emotional, can fester into devastation. The betrayal of fans. How trust was broken forever. Perhaps one of the most heartbreaking aspects of Rick Harrison's downfall was the betrayal of millions of loyal fans. For over a decade, viewers had welcomed Rick into their homes, cheering for his deals and admiring his supposed honesty and hard work. Pawn Stars wasn't just entertainment. It was a symbol of American grit and determination. Rick's confession shattered that illusion completely. In court, Rick acknowledged the deep sense of betrayal he caused, admitting that he knowingly lied to his audience by portraying himself as a straight shooter while running an illegal empire behind the scenes. Fans who had defended Rick against critics now felt humiliated and angry. Message boards and social media exploded with outrage, with many calling Rick's deception the ultimate scam. Some compared the betrayal to discovering that a beloved family member had led a double life. Rick's carefully crafted image, the gruff, lovable everyman, was exposed as a facade hiding greed, addiction, and corruption. During his statement to the court, Rick said he hoped someday to earn back a fraction of the trust I destroyed. but few believed redemption was possible. The bond between Rick and his fans wasn't just broken, it was obliterated. His downfall served as a brutal reminder that public figures, no matter how relatable they seem, can harbor dark and terrible secrets. And once that trust is broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild. Family fallout, how Rick's betrayal tore his loved ones apart. Rick Harrison's downfall didn't just destroy his career, it shattered his family from the inside out. During his emotional confession in court, Rick tearfully admitted that his double life created a chasm between him and those he loved most. His sons, Corey and Adam, who had once idolized him, now sat in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the scale of their father's lies. Family members who had worked alongside Rick at the gold and silver pawn shop were devastated to learn they had unknowingly helped cover up criminal activities. His brother, who had managed some of the shop's financials, faced public scrutiny despite not being involved in the wrongdoing. Rick's betrayal wasn't just legal, it was deeply personal. He broke the trust of people who had stood beside him through fame, fortune, and family hardships. Thanksgiving dinners, family celebrations, even simple phone calls became impossible. Resentments flared, with some relatives cutting off all contact entirely. In court, Rick apologized directly to his family, his voice shaking with emotion, acknowledging that no prison sentence could punish him more than the loss of their trust. Tabloids feasted on the drama, publishing invasive stories about bitter fights and betrayals behind the scenes. Ultimately, Rick's confession revealed a tragic truth. Sometimes, the greatest casualties of a fall from grace aren't financial or legal. They're the broken relationships that can never be fully repaired. His family, once his pride and joy, became another painful reminder of all he had lost. The final verdict: Rick Harrison's sentence and public reaction. After days of shocking courtroom revelations, tearful confessions, and brutal testimonies, the moment of reckoning finally arrived. Rick Harrison's sentencing. The judge, clearly moved but unwavering, handed down a harsh but calculated punishment: 25 years without parole. Rick stood silently as the sentence was read, his once proud posture slumped in defeat. His lawyers had begged for leniency, citing his confession, addiction struggles, and previous contributions to the community. But the prosecution argued that Rick's crimes, money laundering, fraud, conspiracy, and complicity in violent acts, demanded serious consequences. Public reaction was swift and overwhelming. Some felt the sentence was justified, seeing it as long overdue justice for a man who had built an empire on lies. Others, though disappointed, expressed sadness, struggling to reconcile the Rick they thought they knew with the criminal he had become. Former fans flooded social media with a mix of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. News outlets ran 24-hour coverage, replaying highlights from Rick's emotional confessions and analyzing the collapse of his once beloved empire. Meanwhile, Rick's final words in court echoed in the public's mind: "I built everything on a lie, and now I must pay the price." His downfall served as a tragic cautionary tale about fame, greed, and the devastating cost of living a double life. Rick Harrison's story, once celebrated as the American dream, had ended in a very American tragedy. A man undone by his own ambitions,